is an interesting observation that different Sforim make regarding the difference between the way we commemorate mourning for private bereavement and the way we commemorate or observe mourning for the Chorban Beis HaMikdash. When it comes to private mourning, a person loses a relative, then the Aveila starts off very, very chamor, and then it progressively gets easier with the passage of time. We have Shiva, where the Avel does not even leave his house, and then we have Shloshim, where things are much easier, and for most relatives, that is the end, and then for parents, there's Yud Beis Chodesh. But basically, we go from the chamor to the kal. Masha'in Kain, when it comes to the time of year that we commemorate the mourning over the Beis HaMikdash, things start off relatively easy. We have the 3 weeks, so we don't get haircuts, we don't make weddings. And then the 9 days, it's more severe. And then the week of Tisha B'Av, and then Erev Tisha B'Av with the crescendo of Tisha B'Av. So the trajectory of mourning goes from the kal to the chamor instead of from the chamor to the kal. And one of the reasons that's given is that the purpose of the mourning is a very, very different thing. When a person loses a relative, loses a loved one, b'derech klal, their life is shattered. They are so paralyzed with grief that they don't see any way they can resume life. They feel they cannot go on. As a result, one of the purposes of Avelos is to habituate yourself, la'at la'at, to become healed, so you will be able to observe a normal life. So you start off with Shiva, in which people come to you, you don't even leave your house. And then as you get psychologically stronger, as you experience a certain sense of internal healing, you're able to step outside, put your toe in the water, and then eventually you can go to simchas, and eventually you can interact with people. So the whole purpose of Avelos is to take us from a paralyzing grief that shatters our whole existence to be able to eventually live again. Because it is the Ratzon Hashem that a person lives again. It is the Ratzon Hashem that life has to go on. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, are you more of a Rachamim than me? A person has to live. You never forget your grief, but at the same time, as long as Hashem has given you life, you have an achrayus to live a constructive and a productive and a good life. So thus, Avelos goes from the chamor to the kal, because the whole tachlis of Avelos is to heal us so we will be able to rejoin life. When it comes to the Chorban Beis HaMikdash, we have very much of an opposite problem. How many people cannot get up in the morning because they are so tzubrachin over the Chorban Beis HaMikdash that they can't get out of bed? That would be a relatively new excuse not to make davening in the morning. I just can't. I can't. I'm broken. I'm shattered. I'm paralyzed. I can't eat. I can't think. It's very much the other way around. We don't even know what it is that we are supposed to be sad about. Just as if a person was born blind, they could never understand color. If a person was born deaf, they cannot really understand music. We don't even know what it is that we don't have. We don't even know what it is that we are missing. After all, in the aftermath of the 6-Day War, when, Baruch Hashem, we regained the old city of Yerushalayim and the Har HaBayis, and there were people who actually said, even within the Orthodox world, they were saying, this prayer Nachem that we're going to say at Mincha. And we talk about Hashem rebuilding the city, HaChareva, that is destroyed, HaBzuya, that is humiliated, that is burnt, that is Shomema, that is desolate. And people raised the question, what do you mean desolate? Baruch Hashem, Yerushalayim, and Baruch Hashem, you see Torah in Yerushalayim, and you see children in Yerushalayim. Is it true that we can talk about Chareva, Bezuya, Shaimema? So there were people who actually suggested that maybe we have to amend the bracha of Nachem to reflect contemporary conditions. But once again, this reflects the blindness, the deafness of not even knowing what it is that we don't have. The generation that experienced the Churban, they knew what they were losing. That's why they couldn't eat meat. Literally, they felt they couldn't eat meat, they couldn't drink wine, until the Chachamim told them, listen, you have to go on with life. Otherwise, you're not going to eat water, drink water, because there's no Nisa Chamayim, so you have to live. But intrinsically and instinctively, they literally couldn't eat. The loss was so devastating that they literally had no desire for the pleasures of this world. But today, what is it that we're mourning? What is it that we're crying? What is it that we don't have? You know, again, at the Six-Day War, they say, when the religious Chayolim got to the Kaisel, and they were crying, they were so, on one hand, happy, and on the other hand, they were able to truly mourn the Churban Beis HaMikdash. So they were crying both tears of joy and tears of sadness at the same time. So the story goes, there was a Chiloni soldier, a non-religious soldier, who also began crying. And when his friend said to him, even somewhat mockingly, what are you crying about? What does this wall represent to you? It has no meaning to you whatsoever. And his response, which has now become, has kind of entered Israeli folk culture, his response was, I'm crying because I don't know why they are crying. And the truth of the matter is, this is not just the response of a Chiloni soldier. This is us. We ought to cry, as someone asked the Sfas Emes, what do I do if I can't cry over the Churban Beis HaMikdash? He said, cry over the Churban of our neshama that cannot be margish what it means not to have a Beis HaMikdash. The Beis HaMikdash is not just a nice building. Yes, it is true that Chazal say, anyone that didn't see Herod's Mikdash never saw a beautiful building in his life. But beautiful buildings we have. We have beautiful buildings right now. But the Beis HaMikdash represents a relationship with God, a closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a sense of intimacy, a sense of love. And if our hearts are so blocked and so stopped up that we don't even know the meaning of that loving relationship, then indeed we are lost, we are bereft. And for that, as the Sfas Emes says, that is enough of a reason to cry. And therefore, going back to the original question, the reason why Avelis moves in an opposite trajectory from the Kal to the Chamor is that the goal of Avelis over the Churban is not to take us out of our grief so we can re-enter normal life. That's not our problem. It's to put us into a frame where perhaps external deprivations will get us in a frame of mind where we realize what it is that we've lost. The point is not to get out of the grief. The point is to get into the grief, because our default setting is we don't feel anything at all. We don't know what it is that we don't have. And this is an awesomely difficult problem, a problem that all of us struggle with. You know, they say Rabbi Lapyan was already a Zaken, he was already in his 80s. He began saying Tikkun Chatzos. He began getting up at midnight and saying the prayers for the Churban Beis HaMikdash. So somebody asked him, you know, you're 80 years old, why are you doing Tikkun Chatzos? So he said that after 120 years we go up to Shemayim. So the Malachim that make us give an accounting of our lives go through every page of Shulchan Aruch to check off what did we keep, what didn't we keep. Did you keep this halacha? So he says like this, he says, if something is like Siman, Tough Reish, 600, chapter 600. All right, so by then, if I didn't keep something there, I already have a track record. But Siman Aleph, the first Siman of the Shulchan Aruch, says there's a mitzvah to worry and be concerned and sad over the Churban. If I fail something that's on page 1, I'm really in trouble. So I got to do Tikkun Chatzos because that's already page 1 of the Shulchan Aruch. It's a mitzvah the whole year. It's not only Tisha B'Av. But this is a time that we focus. So we have to think, What does it mean to have a relationship with God? What does it mean to have his carvers to the Shekhinah? What does it mean to feel Hashem's love? What does it mean to be connected? And what is it that I'm missing? Because I'm not connected. And then a person feels a yearning, and a person feels a lack, and a person feels a chisaron. And that itself brings geula. Everyone knows the famous Gemara that Mashiach is born on Tisha B'Av. And the Maral says it does not mean that the birthday of the human being who will be Mashiach has to be the 9th of Av. Mashiach can have other birthdays. Indeed, David HaMelech's birthday was not the 9th of Av. But it means the kayach that brings Mashiach into the world. That's the birth of Mashiach. That which brings Mashiach into the world is the yearning that we have for his karvas to Hashem and for Geula. And that is reflected by how we feel on Tisha B'Av. The more we yearn for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the more the kayach of Geula comes into the world. The Shiva has mentioned many times the beautiful thought of Rav Hutner, when Rav Hutner was asked, what was it that he missed about Chutz La'aretz? And Rav Hutner said, he missed the yearning for Eretz Yisrael. What's the pshat? We know the English saying, absence makes the heart grow fonder. In some ways, my richuk from Hashem in itself creates a tremendous hiskarvus to Hashem. It creates yearning, a desire for attachment. You're in Eretz Yisrael, you're in Yerushalayim. Paradoxically, you take it for granted. Even when there's a Beis HaMikdash, you can take it for granted. If there's any bracha in Galus, it may be precisely by realizing our richuk that creates a meshunadik akiruv, the passion of wanting to be connected. And therefore, that's what the Maral says is the meaning that Mashiach is born on Tisha B'Av itself. And that might be the connection as well, why the first day of Pesach and Tisha B'Av are on the same day of the week. You could look at it in a negative way, that as B'Tseisim in Mitzrayim, we had Yetzias Mitzrayim, and now look at B'Tseisim Yerushalayim. We messed up a beautiful day. But the other way of looking at it is that the Avelos of Tisha B'Av can bring the Geula HaSida, which is called Kimei Eretz Mitzrayim, Erenu Niflos. Hashem will show us wonders like Mitzrayim. So in a sense, from the B'Tseisim Yerushalayim, we can come to B'Tseisim Mitzrayim once again. So these are machshavas that we have to think about. The yearning to be with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In fact, indeed, Chazal tell us that after 120 years, one of the questions we will be asked in the Beis Din Shel Mala is Tzipisa LiYeshua. Tzipisa LiYeshua does not mean, did you believe in Mashiach? Academically, I could believe in all the Yud Gimel Ikarim of the Rambam. Of course, I believe in Mashiach. I believe in Techiyas HaMesim. Tzipisa LiYeshua is not asking, what do you believe? What do you yearn for? What do you want? What do you desperately desire in your life? Hashem will ask us, do we want Yeshua? You know, they tell the joke, and the joke is maybe not even so funny, because it has a lot of truth to it, about a person who had been planning his retirement for quite a long time. He was then going to go on a vacation. And the day before his retirement, Mashiach comes. So he was quite annoyed. He told his wife, I'm happy Mashiach is here, but, the timing is lousy. He kept us waiting for 2,000 years. I want to go on a 2-week vacation. Couldn't he wait another 2 weeks? Unfortunately, on some different levels, this might be sometimes the way we think as well. The Gemara in Menachos tells the story. At the time that the Romans destroyed the Second Temple, they sent in a Jew, a renegade Jew, Yosef Meshisa, obviously not a very righteous person. They told him, go into the Beis HaMikdash, take out some stuff, and whatever you take out, you'll be able to keep. And they wanted a Jew to desecrate the temple. So Yosef Meshisha comes in, and he comes out with the menorah. The menorah. So the Romans said, well, we're not going to let you keep that. The menorah of solid gold was quite valuable. He says, go in and take something else. So Yosef Meshisha refused to go in. He says, I'm not going in again. And, he was tortured, he was killed, he died al Kiddush Hashem. And the Breitowitz Rav said, what exactly happened here? The guy was perfectly willing to go in, and he even wanted the menorah. All of a sudden, he's told he has to go in a second time. They're going to kill him if he doesn't go in. And he dies al Kiddush Hashem. What was the difference between the first time that he went in willingly with enthusiasm and the second time where he'd rather die than do it a second time? And the Breitowitz Rav says that the very experience of being in the Mikdash changed him. It changed him. That was the Beis HaMikdash. The Kedushas HaMikdash was mashpia on him. That which he was perfectly willing to do when he was min hachutz, when he was outside, now became absolutely unthinkable, even at the pain of death. And indeed, the Navi Yecheskel, when the Navi Yecheskel describes the third Beis HaMikdash, the Bayis Shlishi, Sheibane b'meirav yameinu, we should be zeicha to the binyan habayis. So he describes a certain ritual, a certain halacha that's very interesting. Now, there are many gates to the Azara of the Beis HaMikdash. The Mishnah says there are 7 gates. There's another opinion there are 13 gates. In fact, there's a whole famous fort. Each tribe had its own gate. And if you didn't know your tribe, you went into the 13th gate. And the Arizal writes that that's why there are different nuschos of tefillah. Each shevet had its own nusach. And if you didn't know your nusach, the Ari said his nusach would be the Shara Kailel. Of course, what is the Ari's nusach is a tremendous uncertainty as well. But whatever it is, there are many, many gates. 5, 7, 13, those are the 3 numbers that we have. But the Pasuk says in Yecheskel that if you enter by a northern gate, you must leave by a southern gate. You are not allowed to leave by the same gate that you entered. And there's no particular explanation given for that, but the Mefarshim say that this is symbolic of an important musar. You don't leave the Beis HaMikdash the same way you went in. You are transformed. You are elevated. You are different. In other words, this physical law is reflective of the spiritual phenomenon. A person is nishapech. A person is transformed. I mentioned during keynotes other times as well, the Talmud Yerushalmi that says, every generation in which the Beis HaMikdash is not rebuilt is as guilty as the generation of the Churban itself. Kol dor shelo nivne biyamav ki'ilu nechrava biyamav. I want to again emphasize how significant this statement is, and this statement is a real chiddush. Because without the Yerushalmi, I would have understood it the following. The prior generations committed horrendous averos. Hashem destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, he removed his Shekhinah. We are not guilty of the same, but we don't have a special zechus to bring it back. That's how I would learn without the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi is saying very, very different. The Yerushalmi is saying, you don't need a special zechus to bring the Beis HaMikdash. What you need is not to be guilty of the original sins that were Gorim the Churban. Because if we wouldn't be guilty of the original sins that are Gorim the Churban, it would be Nivne B'Yamav. And therefore the Yerushalmi is telling us, Churban Beis HaMikdash is not an event that happened. It is an event that happens every single day. If Chazal say the Mikdash was destroyed because of this Aveira or that Aveira, it means it is being destroyed today because of that very Aveira. The Beis HaMikdash is burning this very minute. Because if we don't have a Beis HaMikdash on the 9th of Av of Tafshin Ayin Ches, it is because the Aveiros that were Goyrem, the Chorban, are still present in Klal Yisrael, and the building is being burnt this very second. We are destroying, we are being machrib the Beis HaMikdash. Well, we know, of course, that the second Beis HaMikdash was Necharav because of sinas chinam, hatred, polarization, dissension, machlokes. You know, it's very, very interesting that one of the interesting figures of Jewish history at the time of the Churban is Yosef ben Matisyahu, known as Josephus. Josephus, sometimes called the Benedict Arnold of the Jewish people, because he was a general of the Jewish army, that he surrendered to Rome, and he spent the years of the war against Rome under the protection of Titus, the emperor in Rome himself. On the other hand, Josephus wrote historical books, including a historical account of the Churban Abayis. And obviously, every single thing he says has to be taken with an enormous grain of salt, because he had to be very, very careful in what he said, because he was literally living in Rome at the pleasure of the emperor. But there are certain things that he said that I think have a certain ring of truth, because they amplify and correspond with what Chazal tell us. He portrays Titus in a much more positive light than we believe, and of course, obviously, he's lying because he had a reason. He had to write it that way. But he quotes a conversation Titus had with one of his generals, in which Titus is reputed to have said, you know, maybe I don't have to destroy this Beis HaMikdash. If I just leave the Jews alone for long enough, they will destroy it themselves. And Josephus describes a scene in which there were warring factions of Jewish people who were seeking control over Jerusalem, different rebels. These are what Chazal called the Breionim, the wild, rebellious people. And they were shooting arrows against each other from different sides of the Azora. And the Kohanim were ducking the arrows to bring in korbanos. So when Chazal say there was sinas chinam of the Bayis Sheni, they don't just mean people weren't nice to each other. Jews were fighting Jews, and Jews were killing Jews. This was the sinas chinam of the Bayis Sheni. But if we ask ourselves, are we still guilty of sinas chinam? You know, one does not need a lot of rayas. I could prove it from the Yerushalmi. If the Yerushalmi says, "Lo nivne b'yamav, ki lo nechrav b'yamav," so it must be, we have a raya, we have sinas chinam. Who needs a raya? It's obvious. It's clear. The divisions between religious and secular, the divisions between religious and religious. The hatred, the demonization on both sides, and this creates a vicious circle, because Shlomo HaMelech said already, the Chacham Mikol Adam, Kemayim apanim el panim, came leif Adam li Adam, as water reflects the face that you show it, so too the heart of one human being reflects back that you show it. And the Vilna Gaon explains, L'fi pshuto shel mikra, that if I look at a reflecting pool of water, whatever face I show the pool, I'm going to see back. I smile at the water, I get a smiling face. And I frown at the water, I get a frowning face. Says the Vilna Gaon, interpreting Shlomo HaMelech, the heart of a human being reflects back that which we show that person. We show that person disdain. We show that person beetle, denigration. They don't matter, they don't count. Then they will feel the same way about us. We show a person respect. We show a person covet. We show a person that we're makir, the good that they are doing. Then they, whoever the they is, I don't want to be marach, they will be makir as well. So we look at different parts of the world, and you can divide it. Anyone who's frummer than me is a fanatic. Anyone that's less frum than me is an apikoros, whoever me is. And we divide the world into us and them. And we create a certain group and a clique. And if you're in the clique, you're good, and if you're outside of the clique, you're bad. This is sinas chinam. This is sinas chinam. And sinas chinam is often, the Netziv writes, and the Netziv was criticized. The Netziv writes that often people use sinas chinam to look down at other ways that people are trying to serve Hashem, because it gives them a sense of superiority and gaiva, and it takes away the achrayus of cheshbon hanefesh, of looking into ourselves. So I don't have to be marich, and I don't even want to be marich in particular regarding what sinas chinam is. Sinas chinam is not about looking at somebody else and saying, oh yes, they are guilty of sinas chinam. It's about looking at us and asking ourselves, how proper have we been towards building kisharim, towards outreach, towards showing the sweetness of Torah, the goodness of Torah, to make the name of Hashem beloved in the eyes of others. And if we write off those others and we say they don't matter, that is sinas chinam. And that is the reason for the Churban Bayis Sheni. And kol dor shalai nivne biyamav, ki ilu nechrava biyamav. So if the mikdash is not nivne, it's nechrava. And if it was nechrava because of sinas chinam, then that means today there is sinas chinam. But I want to focus on a different nekuda, actually. Although this nekuda is daiva haisar to think about very, very seriously. And that is, the Rambam in the Perush of Mishnayos says a very interesting thing. And you don't have a beferish Uriah from the Gemara, although the Rambam interprets the Gemara this way. The Rambam says that the fast of Tisha B'Av was observed even during the Bayis Sheni, even when there was a second temple. They observed the fast of the 9th of Av. And the question becomes, if the Iker Tainus of Tisha B'Av is because there's a Churban Bayis Rishain, Churban Bayis, then when you have a Beis HaMikdash, why would you be fasting? So the explanation, the simplest explanation, there are a few explanations actually, but the simplest explanation is that even when we regained the Bayis Sheni, we were still mourning the loss of the Bayis Rishain, because there were things in the Bayis Rishain that we never regained again. For example, Nevuah. Nevuah was lost at the very beginning of the Bayis Sheni, Chag Ezchari Malachi. There was no Nevuah, really, for the vast bulk of the Bayis Sheni. The Urim V'Tumim, by which the Kohen Gadol would be able to answer questions, again, a form of Nevuah. So, even when we had a Bayis Sheni, we were still in Avelis because we lost the Bayis Rishon. What that means is, when we are misabel the Beis HaMikdash even today, we are not only thinking about what the Romans did in the year 70, but we're still remembering what the Babylonians did in the year that they destroyed the Bayis, because we never recovered from that. The Bayis Sheni was not the Bayis Rishon. Now, here's the problem. The Bayis Sheni was nechra because of sinas chinam, okay? Sinas chinam, b'avneseinu harabim, we understand our avodah. But the Bayis Rishon was nechrav because of the worst aveiros, of avodah zara, gili araya, shvichas damim. Am I that bad? Am I guilty of avodah? What's my cheshbon hanefesh? I'm supposed to think about the first Beis HaMikdash, and I'm supposed to think about the aveiros that caused the churban of the first Beis HaMikdash. What shaychus does that have to me? Okay, lashon hara, sinas chinam, I can plead guilty, unfortunately. Avodah zara, gili araya, shvichas damim, I'm not that bad. In other words, what relevance, given the fact that the Rambam tells me I am misabel the Bayis Rishain even when I have a Bayis Sheni, what type of cheshbon do I make vis-a-vis the Bayis Rishain that's relevant to my life? In other words, what is my avodah zara, gili araya, shvichus damim? So here I just want to give you 3 terutzim to this question that are somewhat interrelated. Teretz number one is that even if I haven't worshipped an idol, and even if I haven't murdered somebody, and even if I haven't been mizana b'yeshes ish, there are many averos that Chazal have spiritually equated to those averos. For example, Chazal say, Kol hakayes, anyone that is angry, ki ilu oved avodah zarah. Chazal say, malbin pnei chaverei barabim. You humiliate somebody publicly. Ein lo chelek li'olam haba. Chazal say, hirhurei avera, thoughts of improper sexual behavior could even be worse than the avera itself, fantasies or whatever. So here is the thing: even if I'm not guilty of avodah zarah, have I been angry? Do I have kas? Even if I haven't been guilty of murder, have I been malvin pnei chaver barabim? I heard a mice again. I mean, okay, it could be I don't know the whole story, but just an example of things that happen in the world, even in the most Torah situations. A family that I know, not in this neighborhood, they're different country. They were going through a divorce. They were divorced, unfortunately, and the father reported to a teacher, a frum teacher, that the child was not paying him proper kibbud av. Whether it's true or not is not relevant. So the teacher, who's a frum woman, makes an announcement in class that so-and-so does not respect your father, so none of the friends should talk to her. Rachmana litzlan, to use as a method of chinuch, to be malbin pnei chaverei barabim, it violates every single principle of teichacha. Every single principle of teichacha, where it's brought down over and over again. You do it privately, you're not malbin, you're not mavayit. And yet, this is how it's hefker. Being malvin pnei chaver barabim means nothing today. You're doing it l'shem shemayim, so it has a glad kosher hechsher. So that's ritzicha mamish. And hirhurei avera, again, I don't have to be marich. In a world that's saturated with internet and smuts and every step that one takes in the streets, good. If a person's not nichshol b'arayas, that itself is a tremendous kavisha sayetzer. But hirhurei avera there is. So that's teretz number one. Teretz number one is that maybe I'm not guilty of mamish avodah zarah, mamish ritzicha, mamish gili arayas, but I have kas, I have malvin pnei chavera barabim, I have hirhurei avera, so I connect indirectly to those averos of avodah zarah, gili arayas, shvichas damim. By the way, the Balatanya says very beautifully, what's the yesod kol hakayes ki ilu eved avodah zarah? Why is anger avodah zarah? Good, anger is a bad midah, but what makes it avodah zarah? Zok the Balatanya, based on the Chayvas Halavavis, if a person is maimin bi'emuna sholema, that everything that happens to him was decreed by the Rebbeinu Shalom. Now, this is a great theological mystery, because on one hand, if somebody hurts me, he has bechira, he has free will. Hashem didn't make him do what he did. And for his free will, he's going to have to give a din v'cheshbon. Okay, he's not going to get a free ride. On the other hand, says the Chayvas Halavavis, he wouldn't have been able to hurt me unless it was the will of Hashem, for whatever reason, we don't know the reason, that I'm supposed to be sovel a certain amount of hurt. So the Chayvas Halavavis actually writes, it's impossible for any human being to hurt another human being until and unless it is the Gezeirah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So says the Balatanya, I'm angry at you because you hurt me. I'm angry at you, you did something bad to me. But if I believe it comes from the Rebbeinu Shalom, then how can I be angry at you? Elamai, I don't believe the Rebbeinu Shalom runs the world. That's already avodah zarah. You're ascribing the running of the world to something other than the Rebbeinu Shalom. Kol hakayes is therefore ki'ilu eved avodah zarah. Okay, it's Tisha B'Av. We can't be marich in this. The Emes says there's an Orach Chaim that says the opposite. The Orach Chaim actually says Bechira can mean that one person can hurt another person without Hashem's Gezerah. But the Balatanya goes with the Chayvas Halavavas. Okay. So that's teretz number one. Teretz number one is, Avodah Zarah, Gilei Raya, Shvichas Damim, Ba'akifin, indirectly, I have them through Kas, through Malbin Pnei Chaverai, and through Hirhurei Aveira. Teretz number two. We know, of course, everyone has heard of Rav Yosef Karo, the Machaber of the Shulchan Aruch. And it's actually very interesting. There's a special little bit of a historical shaychus to Tisha B'Av. It is brought down that one of the tragedies that happened on Tisha B'Av later was it was the final date of the expulsion. Right, the Jews were they were told to either convert in 1492 or leave Spain. And some Jews converted. They became the Moranos, who tried to keep mitzvahs privately. Other Jews were forced to leave. And their date of departure was said to be the 9th of Av. And the only Jew that was given the option of remaining was the Abarbanel, Rabbi Yitzchak Abarbanel, who was the finance minister for Ferdinand and Isabella. And they needed his acumen so much that they offered to let him remain a Jew as long as he would stay with them. And he, of course, refused the offer. And he was at the head of the procession. He was the manig of that kehila, together with other rabbanim. And towards the rear of the procession, there was a 4-year-old boy with his mother leaving Spain. And that 4-year-old boy was Rav Yosef Karo. He grew up to be, Rav Yosef Karo was actually a child at the time of the expulsion of the Jews from Spain. It is brought down in Svarim that the Abarbanel, together with the other Rabbanim, paskins, that they should leave with music. They actually had musicians on Tisha B'Av playing joyous music as they were leaving Spain. And they give 2 pshatim. It's against halacha, obviously, but there were 2 pshatim for this Hayras Shah, why this was done. One pshat was that people were so tzebrachen, that it was a matter of pikuach nefesh, they needed their spirits to be picked up. But there's a bit of a deeper pshat. The deeper pshat is, they're leaving Spain, and they're crying like it is a Chorban Beis HaMikdash. Says, no. The Yidden have to know, Spain was never their home to begin with. That's not their makom. That's not their place. They're not being kicked out of Eretz Yisrael and Yerushalayim. And they need to know that this is not real Gullus, in order that they should be Misabel al Yerushalayim instead of leaving Spain. But be it as it may, Rav Yosef Karo, in addition to being the Paisek Hador, was a great Makubal. And in fact, although he was 70 when the Arizal came to Tzfat, Arizal was only 38, 39, he was only a year and a half. Rav Yosef Karo used to go to try to learn from the Arizal, but he always fell asleep. And the Arizal said, it was Nigzer min Hashemayim that a person of your godless should not learn Torah from me at all. So, be it as it may, but Rav Yosef Karo had a chavrusa with a malach, a magid. And he actually gave us a sefer of his shiurim with this magid. It's called Magid Meisharim. You can get the sefer, mamish, the Torah he learned from his malach. And in the sefer Magid Meisharim, Rav Yosef Karo tells the following story, that he was learning over a sugya, a very, very difficult sugya. And he was miyageya many weeks, and he finally had a mahalach. And he thanks HaKadosh Baruch Hu for enlightening his eyes in Teiras Hashem. And then he's walking in Tzfat, and you've been there, you know what it looked like, the narrow alleyways of Tzfat. And he overhears a shoemaker learning with his son that same Gemara. And lo and behold, the son, the 8-year-old boy, asks his father, Rav Yosef Karo's kasha. So I assume Rav Yosef Karo didn't want to eavesdrop, but he wanted to hear what's going on. So the father is annoyed at the son. The father says, I knew this Gemara was too hard for you. Your kasha is not a kasha, it's so pashut. And the shoemaker proceeded to give what took Rav Yosef Karo weeks and weeks and weeks to figure out. So Rav Yosef Karo is Sebrachin, because he figures, if this is so pashut, that the shoemaker is upset at his 8-year-old for not getting it. So it's pashut, it's obvious. If I didn't get it after weeks and weeks, it must be Hashem felt I was not worthy of understanding the Torah. Ma chatasi, what was my sin? Why was I not zeicha to understand the obvious? So he asked the Malach. And this is what the Malach told him. The Malach told him, really, it's very much the opposite. The Torah that you brought into the world was something that was deep and inaccessible and so holy that the world was not deserving of it. But through your Yegiah, through your Amelus, you brought it into the world. And once you brought it into the world, anybody could get it. This is what is recorded. So l'chara, the question is, this doesn't make sense on a rational standpoint. What do you mean he brought it into the world? He didn't teach it to anybody. He didn't write it down. He didn't explain it. He brought it into the world. It's in his head. How does that make it easier for somebody else to get it? And the answer is, that's exactly how it works in Ruchnius. When we learn, we do mitzvahs, we bring Kedusha into the world. People say, what is a Ben Torah doing sitting in a Beis Medrash? Good, he's growing. That's fine. What is he doing for the world? How is the world getting better because he's okay? And the answer is very, very real and very, very tangible. A person's avodah creates waves of holiness in the world, and it lifts up the world, and it changes the world, and it makes other people able to be masik things that they never would have been masik. The Chavetz Chaim used to say the intensity of the learning in Radin affected the tznius in Paris. Like an atom bomb. Ground zero, the radiation is most intense. Go a few thousand miles, it'll be weak, but it'll still be there. So by the time the Radin radiation reached Paris, they weren't learning 12 hours a day. But l'chol hapachos, there was a little bit more zehirus in tznius. This is the Pella. The Kedusha is Meshana the world. Memela, vice versa. If you live in a world of Tuma, and you live in a world of Aveira, even if you didn't do any of that, by definition, we didn't create enough Kedusha. Because if we would have created enough Kedusha, the world would have been different. So the anti-Semites are right. When the anti-Semites blame the Jews for all the world's problems. Don't tell people outside the room here. Yeah, we are responsible for everything. So, Avodah Zarah, Gila Rai Shvichas Damim. Maybe I'm not guilty of Avodah Zarah. Maybe I'm not guilty of Shvichas Damim. Maybe I'm not guilty of Gila Rayas. But we live in a world which is shakua, certainly in murder and violence all the time. We live in a world that is filled and besmirched with Gila Rayas. And we live in a world, at least of Avodah Zarah, which can take different forms, if not bowing down to idols, but worshiping money, worshiping power. Right, Avodah Zarah, the Gra says, when the Gemara in Yuma says they took away the Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah, because it was too hard to deal with, it was replaced with the Yetzer Hara for money. So Avodah Zarah is anything you have in your life that is the center of your life other than Hashem. So Avodah Zarah can mean money, it can be power, it can be political ideology. We live in a world that is filled with Avodah Zarah, Gilei Rai Shvichas Damim. So even if we, as B'nai Torah, we don't do those Averos, but we have an achrayus for those Averos, because it was within our power to make this world a different world, as the Beis Yosef story indicates. And if we didn't make the world a different world, we become at least partially responsible. So Memela, that's a second teretz, why we are misabel on Avodah Zarah, Gilei Arayas, Shvichas Damim. The third answer to this question I want to give is based on a yesod of Rav Tzadok of Lublin. And Rav Tzadok says the following: it is true that Avodah Zarah, Gilei Arayas, Shvichas Damim are extreme behaviors, and most of us may not be guilty of those extreme behaviors. But they are, in fact, external symptoms of character flaws in midos that are very, very deep. And even if a person doesn't have the symptoms, but the cause of those symptoms could be mushrash inside of our personalities. Now, Chazal tell us that the three positive forces of holiness in the world, Shimon HaTzadik, right, is Torah, Avodah, right, Al Shleisha Devarim Ha'olam Oimed. The world stands on three pillars: Torah, Avodah, Gemilas Chasadim. But what are the three negative factors that destroy the world? Rabbi Elazar HaKaper says, Hakina, jealousy; Taiva, extreme lust for the pleasures of the world; and Kavod, looking for honor, ego gratification. Maitziyin es ha'adam min ha'elam, they take a person out of the world. The Alter of Slobodka used to say, not only does it mean that you lose your Eilam Haba, which you will, but it even destroys this world. A person is never going to be happy with what Hashem has given him if he's filled with jealousy and taiva and a desire for kavod. So here's what Rav Tzadok says. Rav Tzadok wants to say, Avodah Zarah Gilei Rai Shvichas Damim have a correlation to kina, taiva, v'kavod. Now, how is that so? So some of this is a little easier, a little more obvious than the others. He says, jealousy, when taken to an extreme, results in murder. And in fact, even statistically, if you factor out terrorist killings, which unfortunately in Eretz Israel is a big factor, you simply look at, crimes of violence, you will often find that most commonly it is done for jealousy. Trivial jealousy. Somebody might be jealous of your jacket, your shoes, whatever it is. You're talking to his girlfriend. Whatever it is, in a violent world that we live in, the extreme manifestation of jealousy could literally be to take somebody's life because you want to take away something that they have. So Mamela Reb Tzadok says, if kina is the shayrish of shvichas damim, then even if I'm not a shayfech damim, kol zman I have the midah of kina in my mitzias, I am connected to that symptomology of being a shayfech damim. Because I have the seed within me that chas v'shalom could result in shvichas damim. Taiva is obviously connected to arayas. Right? Gili arayas is the extreme symptom of taivas. But even if a person hasn't gone all the way, there are the taivas of Eilam Hazeh that take a person away from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now again, although Judaism is not ascetic, we do believe a person should get reasonable pleasure from the world. And in fact, the Talmud Yerushalmi says a person is osid litinas adin for all the pleasures of the world he could have enjoyed and did not enjoy, because they can be used as a springboard to be makir tov to Hashem and to see HaKadosh Baruch Hu's greatness and to love Hashem. But still, it is a davar pashut that when a person is shakua in the taivas of Eilam Hazeh, their heart is not open to the ruchnius of Torah. And there's an interesting psychological reason for that. Because physical pleasures are instant gratification. And ruchnius pleasures take time and effort. And bichlal, when a person is habituated to the instant, they no longer have the patience or the zitzfleish for things that take time. In fact, this is even in the secular world. This is a major concern. People are concerned, even in colleges, that the use of the internet, which is web surfing, going from this, that, people don't know how to concentrate anymore. They can't stick with something. They just go, a pizer hadas in which the mind is moving in all different directions. You can't concentrate, right? So it's true that Gashmias is instant gratification, and Ruchnius requires a yigia and being aimed on something. They say Rav Chaim used to, they might have went there. Rav Chaim was once had to get a sefer. So he climbed on, this is Rav Chaim Soloveitchik, and he had to climb on a ladder to get it. And he took the sefer and he stood on the ladder for 12 hours. And one hand was behind his back. He was holding the sefer with one hand. And after 12 hours, he finally started screaming. He says, "What is this weight behind me?" His arm like fell asleep. He lost circulation in his arm. And the pshat is, he got so orangutan, so concentrating in what he was doing. He's standing on the ladder for 12 hours to be shakua. I hate to say it, modern science says the amount of time we're able to sustain a thought runs to the level of 1.5 minutes. We can't think about anything straight more than 1.5 minutes. Our mind starts wandering already right away. This was 12, can you imagine 12 hours of just shakua in a machshava? And that comes because when a person is menutak from the taivas of Eilam Hazeh, they have more of a kesher. So again, Rav Tzadok says that kina is the shayresh of shvichas damim, taiva is the shayresh of gilui arayos. Now the third one is a bit more difficult, but he says the shayresh of avodah zara is kavod. This is interesting because Rav Tzadok is understanding that people invent religious and moral systems not because they are philosophically convinced that those are correct, but because they seek a spiritual system that will allow them to do whatever it is they want to do. So the philosophy, again, the Rashiv often says, the philosophy follows the psychology. Right? Again, the mashal that the Rashiv often gives is, if we had a religion, if the Torah were to say, you are commanded to indulge in every taiva that you want, whenever you want, somehow we would be asking fewer questions about how do I know the Torah is min hashamayim. Now you might say, well, wait a second. Objectively, it's the same problem. Says, no, but if it fits what I want to do anyway, somehow I don't have the philosophical questions. The philosophical questions come when it's stopping me from doing what I want to do. So therefore, all of the avodah zaras, all the ideologies in the world, although externally they seem to be based on philosophical premises and logical argumentation, they all come because I want a system that allows me to be the master of my faith and the captain of my ship. And that comes from the kavod and the ego and the arrogance and the gaiva of wanting to be in charge, which again, a very common human flaw. And therefore, in answer to the question, Rav Tzadok says, even though we are not directly guilty of avodah zarah, gilui arayos, shvichas damim, but we're guilty of avodah zarah via kavod and gilui arayos via taiva and shvichas damim via kina. And therefore, as part of our cheshbon hanefesh, on the day that we mourn the Churban Beis HaMikdash, on the day that we yearn for the rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash, we have to be mesaken not only the sinas chinam, which, as I say, is very obvious and a very, very central avodah, but at the same time, we have to be mesaken even the pegamim of the Bayis Rishon, avodah zarah, gilui arayos, shvichas damim. Again, we hope that this will be the last time, the last year, that we have to talk about these things, that B'ezras Hashem, we should be zeicha to the Geula Shleima, b'mheira v'yameinu, we should be zeicha to a binyan abayis. There's a beautiful old minhag of Yerushalayim, that the afternoon of Tisha B'Av after Mincha, the housewives, the women of the house, would clean the marpeset, would clean the porches, would clean the floors, in anticipation of welcoming Mashiach. And even on the 9th of Av itself, because as I said before, as the Maral learns, the yearning brings Geula into the world. Even on the 9th of Av, we express our hope. We don't say Tachanan today, right? You notice, we don't say Tachanan today. Because it's called a Moed, it's called a Yom Tov. What type of Yom Tov? It's the least likely Yom Tov you would expect. But again, even on the 9th of Av, and indeed precisely because of our yearning and our tsar, this is the koach that will bring Geula into the world. So if we try to resolve to make our heart and our soul a place for Ashras Hashchina, if enough of us do it, right? The pasuk says, "V'yasu li mikdash, v'shachanti b'seicham." Hashem says, "Make for me a holy place, a temple, and I will dwell in them. Chazal say it's not that Hashem dwells in the building. Hashem dwells in us. So you read the pasuk backwards. If v'yasu li mikdash v'shachanti b'seicham, when it's v'shachanti b'seicham, then there will be v'yasu li mikdash. So b'Yezras Hashem, may we be zeicha that the Shekhinah should dwell within our heart, within our soul, and then we should be zeicha to the bayis shlishi that is yored min hashamayim.